Youngstown Penguin Football Podcast. As always, I'm your host, live from Tampa, Florida, Salgado. With me, always, are my co-hosts, Hall of Fame quarterback Kurt Hess, former Director of Football Operations Dan Cobb, and the Sledge, Kyle Searle, a.k.a. the voice of the Penguins on ESPN+. Great job last weekend, and he's doing it again for ESPN Plus this weekend. And we have a very special guest with us, Sam Herder, who, if those of you don't know us, if there is a Kurt Herbstreit of the FCS level, this is the guy. He covers FCS football nationally. So he's got Hero Sports that he writes for. He's got probably the best national podcast there is. He'll tell you all about it. We're going to dive into everything. We're going to talk about the crazy Southern Illinois win to put the Penguins at 6-4, talking playoffs. We're going to talk to Sam about playoffs and the Penguins, and we're definitely going to get you guys ready for Indiana State. But before I break down the Southern Illinois game and we recap it, Sam, want to give you an opportunity for those of us who don't know you, just a bio from A to Z, where you're from, how you got into the journalism career. Tell us how you got into Hero Sports and the whole nine.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys having me on. I always love hopping on some other shows. And I live in Minnesota, Minneapolis area. I grew up in Minnesota. Played all the sports. Small town of 3,000 people, so played the 4 sports. And my dad's longtime coach in multiple sports, so that's kind of how I grew up around sports. And then wasn't really sure what I wanted to do in college. Eventually figured, maybe I could just write about sports for a living. And so I went to journalism school at North Dakota State in the early 2010s. So that was really my introduction to FCS football. I didn't really follow NDSU football or, any FCS teams really growing up. And so my introduction to the FCS was when I went there and was a student media member and covered all the games up in the press box. And that was, the first few national titles for NDSU. So that was my introduction to the FCS. And then after college, kind of worked in the newspaper and magazine industry for a couple of years, and then came on full time with Hero Sports covering the FCS in 2018, I believe. So 7-8 years doing this full time, and it's been really a great job for me, and I really enjoy doing it.
Were you at Fargo in 2011 for the first national championship?
Yep. I was there for that one. That was kind of my first year covering NDSU as a very young journalist. I didn't know exactly what I was doing back then, but yeah, I was covering that team.
Nice. We'll pop quiz you early. You lost one game that season. What was the one game the Bison lost in 2011?
Was that to Youngstown State?
They told us if we go to Fargo and win and then lose to last place Missouri State, we're in the playoffs. So like classic Youngstown State, we went up and beat number 1 North Dakota State, and then came home and just completely crashed against Missouri State, and that was us. We were all there. That was
That was. Well, I remember game. Kurt was the quarterback, right?
Yeah.
In those early years, yeah, I remember him in the Fargo Dome, one of those games.
Yeah, and Kyle Searle carried out the sledge onto the field at the time, but
not in 2011.
Well, real quick, we're going to definitely give you a couple opportunities, but for the fans, how can they follow you? For those of them listening at the top of the show.
Our website is herosports.com. That's where all the FCS content lives. I'm on Twitter at Sam Herder FCS. And then our podcast is called FCS Football Talk. That gets posted on herosports.com as well, but you can find it on your usual podcast platforms as well, the FCS Football Talk podcast. And then I go on different shows, throughout the week, different radio shows. I usually, post those links as well on my Twitter, so people can listen to those as well.
Yeah, and not to make Sam's head big, but it is the best, my personal opinion, is the best national podcast for FCS. So if you want to know what's going on beyond Youngstown State or Missouri Valley, his podcast is definitely a must listen. But guys, let's get into Southern Illinois. The Penguins won 48-38. The game was more out of control than the score shows. Real quick, before we get into the plays, I know no one cares, but I got to say it. I was up there for my birthday. We had a podcast unite. It was great to see some of the listeners that watch us on the podcast recognize us, say hello. It was great to meet y'all. It was awesome. Definitely great to see Coach Tressel, the Godfather. We went down into his box. He was at the game. It was awesome able to watch a quarter with him. Saw Mr. Strollo, the whole night. It was fantastic, and loved being back at Youngstown State with the boys. Trees, full foliage look. Definitely missed the seasons there, so that was fantastic. But let's dive in. Tough start to say the least. You could tell Southern Illinois Salukis definitely scripted because in 2 plays they attack us going 70 yards in less than a minute. And the Salukis strike real early, 7-0. Don't panic too yet because the Penguins answer directly after with a touchdown of their own. It is a 12-yard pass from Bo to Wilson to tie the game. Penguins uncharacteristically, or I guess it is starting to be a little characteristic. Another special teams fumble, but this time by Max Tomzak. He fumbles. Great pickup by the defense on the change of possession. They hold the Salukis to a field goal, making it 10-7 Salukis. But just before halftime, the Salukis will score again, making it 17-7. That's the half. Starting to get panicked just because we were the better team on the field all 4 quarters, in my opinion. But we just kind of were slow out of the gate as kind of we've been all season. So you didn't know if it was time to panic or not. But in the second quarter, it opens up again, and the Salukis score 24-7. But we answer as Bo Burngarden has a 5-yard run, making it 24-14 at the half. It's within reason. You're not panicking too much anymore. Third quarter, kind of back and forth, but the Penguins score on a 17-yard pass, Bo to Wilson again, 24-21. And this is when the Penguins just take complete control. Another Bo Burngarden pass to Ethan Wright for 19 yards, making it 28-24. Another, I'm sorry, not another, but Gilbert on a 40-yard run, 35-24. And then as the Salukis start to make it a little interesting, in the fourth quarter, they will score, making it 35-30. It is a 5-point game, but the Penguins will answer and with a couple touchdowns of their own to finally make it 48-30. And what you think is over, I think at this point in time, Kurt Hess has loaded his girls and his family into the car. They're headed back to Columbus. But just to make the score look a little bit better, in the last 30 seconds, the Salukis put 8 more points on the board to make it 48-38. Your Youngstown State Penguins win the game. That was a lot. There was a lot of scoring. It seemed like the game would go on for 5 hours. Kurt, what'd you think, man?
Yeah, just from the offensive side, I think Southern Illinois, you got to give them a lot of credit. They came out ready to play, and definitely on away trips and road trips. Sometimes it's easier as a team to really focus in and come together as a unit because you're the only ones there working together. So it felt like a good Valley test for them. They came ready to play. It felt like we were the better team, kind of sound like you said the whole time. But you can't knock either program right now for their display of talent. Both squads definitely have a high talent level. And what this game kind of came down to early on for us was the miscues kind of had Southern Illinois in the game with the fumble, missed field goal. But once our defense kind of got a couple stops there, you were just able to see how hard it is to play defense against not only just Bo Brungard, but our entire offense when we have some type of vertical threat. And Kyle can probably speak to this better than I can, but when Bo drops back to pass, it's easier as an offensive lineman, and our O-line's doing a great job to keep guys in front of you because those defensive linemen aren't worried about just getting to you. They're also worried about containing you. So I think that slows them up a little bit, which if Bo can push the ball down the field and have some type of vertical passing game, we are really dangerous offensively. And you can see that once we figure that out, it starts to click. I don't know how defensive coordinators game plan against Bo. It's very challenging. But you did see a little bit of that. If we're giving the ball away and we have some missed field goals or we have a muffed punt, better teams, kind of like Southern Hill, are going to stay in the game, and we can lose games. So we're doing really well offensively right now. It's really about cleaning a lot of those things up. And I credit Southern Illinois because the display of talent on the field was really amazing. It was something to see. That made that game very exciting.
No doubt. And score wise, you picked 42-28, which was Kristen was 40-28, very close to you. But our boy Richard Wolf takes the crown at 42-35 as a score prediction. So hats off to Wolf. But Sam, obviously you haven't been on the podcast all season with us. So not just this game in particular, but the Penguins overall this season. What does this game mean? What are your thoughts on this team?
Yeah, I thought it was a huge win, especially because when you're coming off of a really close performance against just in general, a top 5 team, but a number 1 team in NDSU, sometimes you wonder, is there going to be that physical hangover and, a mental hangover as well? Every coach will say we have to treat the opponent the same, but when we're talking 18 to 23-year-olds, like you see the number 1 next to a team, like that's going to get your attention a little bit more compared to some other opponents. And so I thought Youngstown State did a good job settling in. I predicted Youngstown State to win like by 7 points, I think, in a higher scoring game. And so it wasn't necessarily a shootout with the game flow, but I kind of expected, a higher scoring game in this one because Southern Illinois is so dangerous on offense. Obviously YSU is dangerous on offense as well. So it kind of played out how I wanted or how I expected it to. And like you guys mentioned, it kind of felt like Youngstown State, once they settled in, was in control the whole way. SIU, their offense is good enough where they can, even when it seems like they're down and out, they can pop an explosive play and get within striking distance, but Youngstown was able to hold them off.
No doubt. That's exactly how it felt. But Cyril, you were in the booth, ESPN Plus. One of my favorite things about this is when you're in the booth and you listen, you're very politically correct, but you are texting the thread your true feelings on what's going on. So you could tell us now that you're not on ESPN, what'd you think?
Hey, yeah, so Dre Smith is awesome in the booth. The play-by-play, absolute awesome to work with and fills the air really well when it's kind of crazy. Like when you're watching a game, it kind of is slow, but when you got to commentate on it, like the game's like moving really fast, you're on to the next play and you're like, oh, now it's like too late for me to say anything. But you are supposed to be a neutral party on the broadcast, which I do really try to be. But one thing that I thought on our defense was, or let me just talk about SIU. We talked about how they like run the ball really well. That's kind of been their identity. And in this game, they were trying to push the ball downfield, I felt like uncharacteristically. And they had success with it early, hitting the middle of the field. They wanted to, get the ball between the hash marks to the receivers on deep threats, deep routes. And they were having some success early. And they missed a couple open guys down the field. So, I mean, that's still something that we got to clean up on defense there. And YSU and Southern Hill are kind of built identical in terms of like what they can do on offense. So DJ Williams has the potential to run really well, but our defensive line did not have any pressure on him, I felt, for a good 3 quarters. So like he had the whole pocket, so he had time to throw the ball downfield and didn't need to run. When he chose to run, he had some success with it. So I think that we need to, when we're playing mobile quarterbacks, to just contain better, keep the pass rush and keep the lanes tight. But overall, I mean, going down 24-7, that this team coached by Doug Phillips is going to play 4 quarters. You're just kind of like wondering how it's going to play out. And to rattle off, I think we had 28 unanswered points to take the lead or something like that. It was really incredible. And I always talk about how like I feel like our third quarter is always kind of lackadaisical. I don't wish this to be the case. I don't want any of our quarters to be lackadaisical, but I feel like our third quarter was in the first quarter where we didn't look like we were ready to play. A lot of little mistakes. Maybe SIU was fired up and ready to go early, but that's kind of my take on it. Ultimately, I don't think that one team looked better than the other. I mean, you guys are saying, hey, I think YSU looked better than SIU or the whole game. And I genuinely don't feel that way. I think that they looked evenly matched. And it was a game of runs. Like SIU had, 24 points early, and then, Youngstown State got the points when it mattered towards the end of the game. But even then, once SIU settled in towards the end of the game and started running the ball, they made it interesting in the fourth quarter. So I'm not going to sit here and say Youngstown State looked like the better team. I think what they did was they looked like a team that was playing in a playoff game and was playing good situational football.
Well said. Well said. DK, what did you think, man?
Yeah, first off, Sam, thanks for being on with us, man. It's cool to finally meet you and hear about the things you're doing with Hero Sports. But I kind of thought there was about 5 moments in the game where I think we won the game, and I think at the end of the first half when we had that stop on defense and they tried the field goal, missed the field goal. So we go into half only down 24-14 instead of 27-14. And so we're thinking, I think we were all together during those moments for a bit. And wow, if we can come out in the second half, score a touchdown, get right back in it. And we did. But I thought there were I made a note of 4 third down conversions we had in the second half that extended the drives for us and I think won us the game. The first was early third quarter. It was 3rd and 16. And Bo scrambles for 20 or 21 yards. First down, 2 plays later, he hits flash on that tunnel screen. We score a touchdown to cut the lead to 3. And then we had the ball on our own 14, 3rd and 5, and Bo hits Luke Hensley on a pass. A couple plays later, it's 3rd and 12. He throws about a 16 or 17-yard completion to Max. And we go 2 plays later. I think it was 2 plays later. Gilbert busts the touchdown run. So we take the lead. Then early fourth quarter, I had a note here. It's 3rd and 8, and Bo goes over the top to Mike Solomon, and we go down and score there again. And then late in the fourth quarter, I think it was about 6 minutes to go. It's 3rd and 4. And Kurt, you could probably speak to this better than any of us. Bo throws an outcut to Max, opposite hash. 3rd and 4, it's about a 6 or 7 yard completion for first down. And there was a linebacker coming free at Bo. And he hung in there through this opposite hash, right on the money to Max, first down. And then a handful of plays later, we go down and Bo scores that touchdown to put us up. I think that was 42-30 or 41-30 at that moment. And that was the touchdown where the safety ran free. We were running quarterback power. And he's got the angle on Bo and doesn't even get a hand on him. And Bo scores. So I thought those 4 third down conversions were just huge, that we were able to extend the drive, go down and score. And, if one of those third downs doesn't get converted, maybe things are a little different. But I thought the throws that Bo was making and, our receivers were making great catches. I think the Max catch for almost 20 yards was huge. It wasn't an easy catch. So, and our offensive line gave Bo the time, as Kurt mentioned. So, we seem to separate on those, what did Wolf always call it? Money down on those third down conversions. At those 4, we were 4 for 4 on those third down conversions. And I just thought that was the difference in the game.
No doubt. And everything y'all said, y'all summed it up. Just one note I had was when it was 24-7, up in the suites or the loges, as y'all's the locals call it. I happened to run into athletic director Ron Strollo, who looked like he's seen a ghost. And I told him, I was like, man, Mr. Strollo, this is just typical Youngstown State. We'll figure it out in the second half. Doug Phillips has us under control, but he seemed very stressed. And Dan, I'm glad you took me to see the Godfather and Coach Tressel's or Lieutenant Governor Tressel's box, because he was a lot more laid back than Stroller was at that time.
Can I say one more thing about when we got to see The Godfather? He did make a comment that the sledge has outkicked his coverage. So I think
he did.
I got to say that. Sorry. I mean, Kyle, we knew that anyways, but
the future Mrs. Searle was there, and he met
it was observed, and he was respectfully made the same comment about Kurt with Sarah. Like, man, thankfully the kids look like Sarah and not Kurt. So he was complimentary of all of that. So
it was funny, Sal, you brought up that third down, or Coach, you brought up that third down at 3rd and 4. That was with like 5 or 6 minutes left.
Yeah.
And Sarah's getting ready to go. We got a 2.5-hour drive back to Columbus that night after the game. And we're like, she's like, well, when do we go? When do we go? I was like, listen, it's not in the bag yet. Like, we got to still watch. He hits that third down with like 5.5, 6 minutes left. So either we bleed out the clock or we score again and go up. And that's when I was like, hey, Sarah, we can take the girls to the bathroom. Let's start to clean up. We snuck out. We went over to Tress. And if this tells you anything about Lieutenant Governor Jim Tressel, he's the only one in the suite cleaning up the entire suite. And if you know Tress and the stature and the type of person that he is at Youngstown State, he could have asked any one of the people on campus that to clean up his suite. But he told us, he goes, no, you guys got to drive back to Columbus. You go, because we offered to help clean up. He's like, no, I got this. I'll take care of it. And I'm sure he's taken 7,000 pictures that day. And we stole one more selfie. So if that tells you anything about the type of guy that he is, it was great to always see him. And he's actually coming down to Worthington on Friday to one of our other middle schools in Columbus. So, just tells you the type of person he is. It's a cool story about Tress.
Love it.
Sam, do you know about, you got any stories or thoughts on, as we call him, the Godfather, Coach Lieutenant Governor Tressel? Sorry, Sal.
You're good.
No, nothing necessarily. I just know, the history, behind him, and all the accomplishments that he's had, especially as a coach as well. But nothing really too specifically that I can think of.
Yeah, we need to build a statue. But anyway, anything left on Southern Illinois before we move on?
Run it.
All right. Let's recap the week that was at the Missouri Valley Football Conference, of the picks and the spreads. Kurt, hats off to you. You and I actually tied, but you picked Iowa, and they did win. So
Iowa,
the tiebreaker.
I knew it.
I had Washington covering against Wisconsin, and those of you who know what happened, not quite what went down. But to recap what had happened, Illinois State won and cover at Indiana State on their 8.5-point spread. Murray State at UNI. And how about this? UNI wins and covers by a half point. It was a 16.5-point spread, 31-14. UNI wins it. North Dakota State at North Dakota. North Dakota State wins but cannot cover the 8.5-point spread. Southern Illinois, as we talked to in length, was at Youngstown State, and the Penguins won the money line as the underdogs. And then lastly, in what was an incredible game over on ESPNU, for those of you who do not have YouTube TV, South Dakota State at South Dakota. South Dakota wins 24-17. And just real quick before you turn the page, anyone have a comment on any of those games? And I'm just going to comment because, Sam, the inside joke, I guess, is that Kyle Searle is a closet South Dakota fan, and I'm a hater, and I need to apologize. They have come to life here at the end of the season. They are not who we thought they were. Any thoughts on any of the games, though, guys?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point on the Yotes overall. I mean, the game itself was great, but I think that's a good call out on the Yotes and the turnaround they've had, because they brought a decent amount back as far as like a nucleus of their team, but they lost so many starters, and they're plugging in multiple transfers, and they probably came in with the expectations of being able to compete for a national title, and after losing to Lamar and barely beating Northern Colorado and then getting embarrassed by North Dakota State, you kind of wondered where exactly this team would go. And even, their loss to, I believe it was Illinois State, you looked at the rest of their schedule and you go, probably not looking at a playoff team right now for South Dakota, but for them to climb back, they beat UND, they beat South Dakota State. Now they put themselves in a position to make the playoffs. So it's been an awesome turnaround for South Dakota.
No doubt. I thought they were good for dead, and they are back to life. Y'all ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk playoffs, because we are very fortunate to have Sam Herder with us. He does his bracketology on Hero Sports, and I've been watching it for many years. And this guy, his bracket may or may not be perfect, but the teams he has in is 90 percentile above, maybe 99% overall. This guy is always on point with who's getting in the playoffs, and he updates it every year. But Sam, transparently, we were in the playoffs in 2023. Unlike the Dakota schools, when we're not in, we don't follow what's going on with the playoffs. So back in 23, the game was in Frisco. There was only 8 seeds. We were always able to purchase a home game, and we always played local Duquesne or some conference champ that got an auto bid that's a bus right away. What are the changes now in general that we as Penguin fans need to know about now that we're back in the conversation?
Yeah, the big one, which started last year, was seeding 16 teams, which was much needed in the FCS playoffs, in my opinion, because before, like you said, it was 8 seeds. And then for the first round, they just took the remaining 16 teams and then paired them up based off of geography. Like, they couldn't, there are some principles in there, like you couldn't, have regular season rematches. But theoretically, in that model, the ninth and 10th best teams in the playoff bracket could have played, in the first round, just because they were close to each other. And it caused for a lot of regionality. So what they did last year was they started to seed 16 teams. That's of course the same this year. So the top 8 seeds get a first round bye like usual, but now seeds 9 through 16, they automatically host a first round game. They still have to meet the minimum bid, which is like $30,000 or $40,000, something like that. But as long as you meet the minimum bid and you're the higher seeded team, or just in general the seeded team in the first round, you'll be able to host. And so you'll no longer have to have the Youngstown State and Weber State are paired up in the first round. Weber State bids $80,000. Youngstown State bids $120,000 a host. Okay, Youngstown, congrats. You paid more money, you get a host. Now, if Youngstown State is the 16 seed and they're paired up with Duquesne, and Duquesne isn't a seeded team, then then that's a matchup right there. Or if somehow Duquesne gets a 16 seed, just as an example, and Youngstown State is not seeded, Duquesne would automatically get that home game. That's obviously an extreme example right there, but it pretty much makes it so there's more transparency on who hosts, because there have been times where a team outbid the other team, but that team ended up going on the road because the playoff committee felt that team was more deserving. In other examples, there was maybe a more deserving team that should have hosted, but they went on the road because the other team bid more money. So there was just kind of that lack of transparency. Now it's pretty straightforward. If you're a 9 through 16 team, you'll be able to seed as long as you can meet that minimum bid to host.
I remember, I think it was the 22 season that happened, that the team that had the bigger stadium bought more tickets had to go on the road because they were like, well, that team was kind of a tweener. They were actually like a 9th seed. They just missed the seeding.
I think it was UND and Weber State.
I was going to say Weber.
Yes, it was Weber and North Dakota.
Yeah, UND had the higher bid, but they had Weber host the game because they felt they were more deserving. But on the flip side, Montana that year was one of the last teams in, and they hosted a conference champion. And, you would think the conference champion, I think it was like SEMO, was maybe more deserving. Well, Montana submitted a pretty healthy bid. So that's the kind of the lack of consistency that the playoff committee faced. And I think, 22, 23 was really when that kind of hit its peak of getting negative feedback. And so last year is when they switched to the seeding 16 teams.
Always trying to hurt the Missouri Valley. We just got it so tough. So just for clarity for the fans, there is no more purchasing a home game first round unless the other team basically says, here you go. And second is there is seeding, so they are going to tell you. And third, there is no regionality and there is no rematches or no rematch in conference play.
When it comes to the rematches, the playoff committee tries to avoid rematches in the first round, whether it be conference or non-conference. You don't want to have the same type of rematch in the first round. Now, there's like, I believe off the top of my head, UND and Illinois State didn't play this year. I'm pretty sure I'm accurate on that. Let's say UND gets the 15 seed, Illinois State is not seeded. They could pair those two up because they didn't play this regular season. There is still a little bit of regionality in the first round, but it's just less regionality. Whereas before you had 16 teams all in one pool. Let's pair them up based off of regionalization. Now you have these 8 teams or seeds. We're going to pair them up with these other 8 teams. They still base that off of regionality, try to get as many bus trips as possible just to save the NCAA on travel costs. But it is still less regionalized. Doing it this way, and then plus once you get into the second round, the 16 seed feeds into the number 1 seed, 15 into number 2. So whereas before, even the second round was regionalized, where like you would have like NDSU getting sent to Montana State just because of that regionalization. Now it's truly seeded all the way through in the second round, where the number 1 seed will get the best matchup, and then 8 versus 9 will play in the second round, assuming the number 9 seed wins in the opening round.
I love that a lot. What do you guys think? I like that a little better. I mean, obviously, we always can buy a home game, but I like the diversity of matchups. I don't want to play Duquesne or the Northeast Conference champ again. But all right, couple more things on the bracketology. You put together your bracketology every week. You're now at a 3.0. Trying to dive into your rhyme and reason, how you conduct it, what is the mad science behind it, and those of you listening at home. So last week before the Southern Ill game, he had the Penguins traveling to Harvard, which I'll be honest, I was pumped about. I would definitely fly to Boston for that game. Now you have us being seeded as a 16th seed and hosting the first round. And then it looks like going to Fargo in the second round. What is your madness behind this bracketology?
Yeah, so when it comes to the bracketology, it's kind of tough because, I mean, like for example, in my personal top 25 ballot that I submit weekly, like that's who I think are the 25 best teams, and I think I have Youngstown State number 11. But when it comes to my bracketology, I have Youngstown State number 16, and I know that can get a little confusing, but my top 25 is my own opinion, and I'm basing that off of the results and performances so far. Bracketology, I'm also projecting ahead. And so like Southern Illinois, I have them out of the playoffs because I think they're going to drop at least one more game. And so I'm projecting ahead, and I'm also kind of I'm projecting what I think the playoff committee is going to do. So in my opinion, I have Youngstown State winning out to finish with 8 wins. I personally would have Youngstown State higher than the number 16 seed. I think they would have a better resume than SFA, but SFA would have 2 more wins in this scenario. I definitely think Youngstown State would have a better resume than UC Davis, who also could finish with 8 wins, same as Youngstown State. In this scenario, Youngstown would have 2 or 3 ranked wins. UC Davis would only have 1. In my opinion, I think Youngstown would deserve a higher seed than UC Davis, but I'm also have seen what the playoff committee has done with their in-season rankings, and they've had UC Davis in the top 10. And so I just feel like they're a bit more higher on UC Davis compared to Youngstown State. So I'm kind of projecting ahead, trying to guess what the playoff committee does. My main thing is trying to get all 24 teams incorrect, and I'm trying to get all 16 seeds correct as well. When it comes to pairing teams up, it's kind of a shot in the dark because there's no inexact science of, why Youngstown State would play this team. And then, next week I might have them play another team just because you're taking the 9 through 16 seeds, and then you're taking the 8 unseeded teams, and you're pretty much lining them up to each other. And you go, okay, here's a bus trip. Here's a bus trip. This team is pretty close to each other. Here are 3 more matchups. Well, those 2 matchups can't happen because they already played. Okay, that means Youngstown State gets paired up with this team. Whereas next week maybe a team gets knocked down, and so that's why it kind of fluctuates as far as who the matchups will be. So that's kind of the method behind the bracketology. You try to get as many accurate matchups as possible. But like I said, when it comes to pairing teams up, that's kind of a shot in the dark. I'm really just trying to get the correct 24 teams in, and then trying to get the correct 16 seeds. You're never going to get the 1 through 16 order like completely nailed down. Maybe your 14 is the 16 and vice versa. But I'm just trying to make it match up as best as I can to what I think the committee is going to do.
No doubt. everyone wants to know they're in. I mean, it's just fun to look at. Oh, well, we could fly out to Montana State. That'd be a fun road trip. But one thing you said that I know the whole podcast caught. We always go through this top 25, and I asked my co-host, "What do you think?" And the sledge always has something to say about UC Davis. Fan or no fan, Kyle?
I no, like I just they are to me, I think over ranked. I mean, I talk about I think it was Mercer. I was
Mercer.
watching it on Thursday night and UC Davis. It was similar to SIU versus Youngstown State this weekend. It looked like UC Davis was going to run away with the game, and then Mercer was scoring at will. They're going into the fourth quarter. I'm pretty sure Mercer had the ball and down by like whatever the final score was, down by like 2 or 3, and weather delay for like a couple hours, and then they just canceled it. So I mean, to me, Mercer was absolutely going to win that game, and I think UC Davis has just been riding on that preseason ranking and not really doing anything to lose it, but just doesn't have a loss in that column to show, that they need to drop down a little bit too. So,
Yeah, love it. You hit it on the head, Sam. And on your, I mean, you answered this already, talking about your top 25. You mirror the coaches poll pretty equally. Your two major outliers are Youngstown State and North Dakota. You have North Dakota 10, Youngstown State 11, and the other poll has North Dakota 18 and the Penguins 19. I think you answered it mostly for the Penguins. Why you have us so far up high? Is it similar for North Dakota?
Yeah, it's when it comes to top 25 rankings, like at the end of the day, it is opinion, but you try to balance what you see with your eye. I got 6 games going all at, for 10 hours on Saturdays. And so I try to watch these teams as much as possible. And, ESPN Plus allows you to rewatch games too, because your eyes are bouncing around so many times. Like sometimes you'll be watching a screen over here, and then all of a sudden you look over and the team was up 14-0. Now it's 14-14. And you're going, okay, how the heck did that happen? But I do think eye test matters, but you also match that up with strength of schedule and ranked wins and who you beat and who you lost to. And I don't necessarily like the term quality losses, but I do think there is something to be said about how you perform in losses. Like Youngstown State's losing by a touchdown, a little more than a touchdown, 8 points, whatever it was at NDSU. Like that's a different loss than South Dakota State losing to Indiana State. And so you can't just put every loss into one bucket. And so sometimes, and I will say with that said too, like if your only argument is quality losses, that's not a good argument. But if you compare good performances in losses with a couple of ranked wins, I do think that's a good blend. And UND and Youngstown State both have that, a couple of ranked wins, a couple of not good losses, but performances in losses where you go, okay, like that was a really good performance, especially UND. I mean, they would have, could have, should have, but I mean, they could have beaten Kansas State. They could have beaten Montana, probably should have beaten South Dakota. Honestly, probably should have beaten NDSU, in that game watching it last week. But at the end of the day, those are losses. But you can't just say, well, that's a 4-loss team. They're worse than, a 2-loss team, because you have to take into account who they played and how they looked against some of those top opponents.
Well said. Looking at the Penguins at 5-4 and 6-4, and we haven't fallen out of the rankings at all. We were, I think, 4-4 at one point. So it's like, I'm sure a lot of people are looking and scratching their heads, but obviously for us who watch every single game, we get it. For the YouTube chat, I know a lot of you guys have already put questions in for Sam Herder. Keep bringing them in. Cyril is monitoring them up, but let's get into some Q&A for Sam. Curdy, I know you have one from one of our followers. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of our close friends of the show, Sam. His question is a little bit more towards Bo Brungard and the Walter Payton rankings. So at this point right now, where does Bo Brungard rank in those Walter Payton rankings? And then if he's not number one, how do you go about getting to number one?
Yeah, to me, I think he has a legit argument to be the Walter Payton Award winner. And I think, it's hard because there's 55 plus voters on this thing. And the people that vote for the Walter Payton Award, Buck Buchanan Award, all those awards, they're the same voters who vote in the weekly Stats Perform media poll. And there's 55 plus of us, and only like maybe a dozen of us publish our ballots. And we also, when it comes to voting for these awards, like I'll put it out there, hey, here are my top 5 that I voted for. Not everyone does that, and so you don't know where everyone is leaning. A lot of voters that I've either talked to or I communicate with, a lot of them are kind of leaning toward Bo Brungard right now. I mean, I think I am as well. So to me, I'm like, well, I think he could win it, but there's also 40 other voters who might not even have Bo in their top 5 for whatever reason. You just don't know. But I think if he keeps on doing what he's doing, obviously with his arm and his legs, he's going to have a legit shot. It's turned into a quarterback award. I think the last non-quarterback to win it was Cooper Kupp in like 2013-14. And it's a stats board as well. So if you put up good numbers, elite numbers, you're going to have a shot. I try to look beyond just the numbers. I mean, there's multiple times where a guy had the most FCS passing yards in the country, but he didn't make my top 3 because you factor in style of offense. Maybe they're not a very good team, and so they're always behind, and so they have to throw the ball. Level of competition, I factor those in as well as just stats. But I think Bo is definitely up there. I think Cole Payton is up there as well, the North Dakota State quarterback. Teron Dickens, I think from Western Carolina, he's probably going to be in the top 3. I can see a lot of people voting for him because he's top 3 in FCS passing yards, and he's missed 3 games, and he's just putting up crazy numbers. Those are probably the top 3. Derek Robertson from Monmouth is really, really good. He was putting up just crazy numbers. He's been out with an injury, so that kind of sets him back. Montana has a few guys that could be in the mix. Michael Wortham, Eli Gilman, Kiali Ayat, their quarterback, but that's kind of 3 different guys taking up votes. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but I do think Bo, for with how it works, the top 3 vote getters get invited to not Frisco, to Nashville for the awards banquet. To find out who finished first, second, third. I think at this point, I'd be pretty surprised if Bo wasn't a part of that top 3 and at least gets to the ceremony, which would obviously be a great experience for him to go to Nashville and go to that award ceremony. Whether he wins it or not, it's hard to say, but it seems like he's trending in that direction to having a legit shot at winning it.
Is that announced the weekend of the national championship?
Yeah, 2 or 3 nights before the national championship game. And so they've been doing that for a few years now, where they have the top 3 finalists go to, before it was Frisco for the national championship week. And this will be in Nashville, obviously, this year.
Yeah, over at the Vandy Tracker boys. Yeah, we how do I say? We've never been in the conversation to follow it, so now we're all in. So we're definitely following it. Question from, as we talked to you at the start of the show, Chris Elkins, absolute super fan, Youngstown State's latest Hall of Fame inductee, played center for us. He loves you. He follows you. He reads all your articles. So bear with this question, please, and I'm hoping you understand it. He's trying to simplify it the best he can. He says, you, Sam, wrote an article about a year ago listing universities that would be interested in a middle tier. Should that become a reality? I have 2 questions. Where does it stand today, and what do we have to do to make that outcome happen? Because it is his dream.
Yeah, no, I get the question. I think we've kind of been talking about this for several years now, and it seems maybe we're closer to it happening. At the same time, it seems maybe we're still a ways away from it happening, and that's pretty much the Power Four separating itself for football and kind of doing their own thing. Right now the Group of 5 has a seat at the table. They get their auto bid. The highest ranked team, gets a spot at the CFP. How much longer until they negotiate that TV deal and these Power 4 conferences say, you know what, if we don't have a G5 team in here and we have, the 5th place SEC team in here instead, like that's going to drive more TV ratings. It's going to make us more money. So sorry, Group of 5, like you're no longer invited to this party. If that happens, and it might not, I don't know. If it does happen, it probably won't be until 2030, 2031. If that happens, what does the Group of 5 want to do? Do they want to keep on playing in bowl games that don't really mean a whole lot, and players are opting out of bowl games? And, the dirty little secret about bowl games is sometimes it doesn't make you money. Sometimes if you don't sell enough tickets in these low tier bowl games, sometimes it costs you money as an institution. And so do you really want to be in that bowl game, kind of stratosphere, or does the group of 5, if they get their seat taken away at the CFP playoff, does a group of 5 start their own playoff, their own national championship? That's either it's run by the NCAA or it's run by, some third party. And we see that with the NIT and the CBI, right? It's kind of like a secondary sort of tournament. I think if that happens and there's like a legit group of 5 national championship, I think you would see conferences like the Missouri Valley Football Conference, the Big Sky say, hey, we want to be a part of this. We want to be in this, this new second tier playoff system in the football world. I could see that happening. At the same time, there isn't necessarily an incentive for the Mountain West and the AAC, Sun Belt, all those conferences to bring on the Missouri Valley Football Conference into that party. They might just say, no, we're doing our own thing. Like we don't want to bring up FCS, into this. We just want to do our own thing. Because to me, I think in this scenario, the group of 5 would already feel relegated, right? Like they want to be attached to the Power 4 as long as possible because that's where the money is at. If they kind of get booted out of the Power 4, the group of 5 would already feel relegated, and they might have too much pride to invite the top 15 teams in the FCS because they don't want to be FCS 2.0. They want to be, their own thing. And so that's there's a lot of different ways this can go, but you do feel like at some points the group of 5 is not by their own decision, but by kind of being forced out. They might have to start their own playoff system. And if that's the case, I think the Valley would fit in just fine. Moving into that second tier, how they would get there, there's a lot of ins and outs of how that would happen.
And that kind of dives into my question. But one thing I do have to say about a group of 5 playoff, the only issue is you would have to start that early enough to get it all in before the end of the semester, because as we know, the power teams like to purchase the group of 5 players out. So if we want it to be fun and legitimate, not like some of these bowl games, we got to get it in a lot quicker than what the FCS playoff is like. To my point, and you hit it on the head, it's 2030 is going to be the big moment because that's when the SEC, Big 10, Big 12 TV deals in. That's when you can buy your way out of the ACC. We all know Florida State's already saving up money, probably why Mike Norvell still has a job because they're trying to save up to buy their way out. And once that happens, in theory, your group of 5 or group of 4 or group of 3 is really potentially going to turn into FCS Blue Buds, potentially, right? That's kind of what the Sun Belt and CUSA are. But question for you, I asked this last week to our host, and I'm going to ask you 3 options. If when I say money isn't an issue, let's say within reason, and you are the athletic director and could do whatever you want for the Penguins. We're in a very difficult conference, as you know. I'm sure you're well aware. Do you stay put in this conference and stay where we're at? Or as one of our co-hosts says, let's get out. Let's go to an easier conference in FCS, get the auto bid, walk in. We could be in the playoffs every year and not have to struggle. Or do we try to make the jump to the MAC, whether that's now or that's in 2031? What do you do?
Yeah, I think it's either, if you have the option, you make the jump to the FBS or you just stay put in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. I think just recruiting wise and, elevating yourself as a program, you don't want to go to another FCS conference where, the bar lowers for you to win that conference championship. You want to keep on chasing that high bar. And if all of a sudden you go to, you pull at Western Illinois and you go to the Big South OVC, obviously Western's not a good example because they're still struggling, but Youngstown State wins that conference every year in the Big South OVC. Okay, that's great. It excites the fans. You make it to the playoffs. Maybe you get a seed and you end up losing, in the second round. We saw that with Jacksonville State every year. They would finish 10-1. They'd be high in the rankings, and then they would make it to the playoffs and they would lose pretty much right away. And then, all the fans are mad about it. So I think if you're Youngstown State, you want to stay in the Valley. Whether, if the MAC extends an invite, that's such a university decision and all sports decision. If we're talking football, like only just looking at the football program, midweek games, like you're not going to draw good crowds doing that. The TV deal in the MAC is, better, but it's not life-changing or anything like that. I don't know if it necessarily makes up for the cost it takes to be successful at the FBS level. That those don't always equal out, because everyone always talks about the more money you can make in the FBS, but your costs also go up. Whether it's how much funding you need to do, how much you need to pay your coaches, facilities, strength and conditioning, all of those things, that price tag also goes up. So I don't know. I would caution Youngstown State against going to the MAC if that invite ever came, just because, frankly, I think the Valley is better than the MAC. And I think Sagrin, supports that they rank the Missouri Valley Football Conference higher than the MAC. And plus, like I said, those midweek games, I mean, some of those crowds are just so depressing when you're seeing these college kids playing in front of 100 fans in 20-degree weather and it's sleeting out. It's just like, oh man, you're getting 1.5 million viewers because they're all betting on it, but like no one really cares. Bowling Green beats Toledo. Like, just, no one cares about that nationally. Yeah,
well said. I'm with you. I think you got to put as much money in the bank until 2030 and see how it unfolds. DK, questions?
Yep. Sorry about that. Man, Sam, you touched on a lot of really good things. I probably would maybe comment first that there's been talk about Youngstown State getting into the MAC since the 90s. It's not going to happen. And financially, we're not going to, the average MAC budget for football is like $30 million. Ours is half that. So unless I win the Mega Millions, which I'm hoping I do someday, and then I write a big check and a big facility that I call the Y-Town Penguin Podcast, whatever facility. But we're not going to the MAC unless they come to us. So it's just a numbers game and, with what we have budget-wise. But you brought up a good point about the NCAA in the sense of if the group of five doesn't make it and the Power Four go their own way because they have the money and, they basically already have told the NCAA, you don't matter. The college football playoff is not the NCAA playoff and all that, as you know. But we've kind of felt here, maybe I should speak for myself, that the NCAA has been extremely hypocritical for a long time, and especially recently with NIL and all these things. So where do you maybe see a future of what would happen? The NCAA might hope that the group of five has to go to them for a playoff type scenario. But where do you see the future of that in your mind of where the NCAA, what road they're heading down?
Yeah, the NCAA certainly gets deserved arrows, thrown its way. And I think them just being, kind of stuck in the mud for so long kind of led to this situation where we're at now where, you almost feel like the NCAA said, okay, you want all these things. All right, have at it. Have fun with it with NIL and transfer portal. And there was just no guardrails put up. And I feel like, I don't know how they get it, but if the NCAA can get some sort of antitrust, exemption that could allow them to put some guardrails up and some things up to at least limit whether it comes to the transfer portal or the NIL. But right now they just keep on getting sued. And it's funny because it wasn't that long ago when the transfer portal did have guardrails on it. Like you could only transfer once. If you transfer a second time, you had to sit out. Or even if you transferred up a level, you had to sit out unless you're a grad transfer. Like there were guardrails on the transfer portal, just lawsuits overturned them. And so how we, kind of get the toothpaste back in the tube, I don't know. But I defend the NCAA in the fact that I still think they are very important. There's NCAA distributions that goes to schools that are very, very important. The NCAA tournaments, especially the men's basketball tournament, that's kind of the lifeblood of mid-majors because of the payouts that go to each mid-major conferences. That's incredibly valuable for them. The NCAA overall does a good job of, running tournaments. The basketball tournaments and the baseball tournaments and, the softball tournament is awesome, and volleyball, track and field, obviously FCS. Like the NCAA's job isn't to make the rules. The schools vote on the rules, and then the NCAA just enforces them. And the NCAA's job is to enforce the rules that whatever the schools decide and run postseason tournaments. And overall, they do a pretty decent job of doing those two things. A lot of people talk about, the NCAA turned down this request, or the NCAA turned down that request, or the NCAA turned down Sac State's waiver. The NCAA doesn't do any of that. It's the Division I Council, which is made up of school ADs and presidents. Like the NCAA doesn't make these decisions. It's the schools. They just enforce whatever the schools tell them to. So in that sense, I defend the NCAA, but no doubt it's kind of their lack of action in past years has kind of led us to the mess we're in right now.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. When these guys were playing, and Sal and I were on staff in the day, and you couldn't, just get a bunch of cheeseburgers for guys, or you had to apply for occasional meals, and or the cost of attendance they didn't want to give athletes. If Kurt and Kyle can remember back when they were 18, 19, they're big timers now, but back then, if the COA would have said, we're going to give these guys $5,000 a semester, I think those guys would have been doing backflips, and now we're getting guys that are getting $5,000 a month, at our level, so to speak, maybe. So it just, like you said, from an antitrust, I have a brother that's a lawyer. He always said, how can you prevent these kids from making money? And I'm with you. Some of it's gone way out of control, but maybe if they would have seen this coming and not been so, I think the NCAA commissioner made a comment, over my dead body will student athletes get paid. Well, look what happened. So, I just wish they wouldn't have been so, on a pedestal, or thought they were, that they couldn't see this coming, that young people are going to have a chance to profit. So, but I appreciate your answer. That was great insight.
I think Dan saw that movie, The Blind Side, which was just anti-propaganda on NCAA. So ever since then, they're out. Cyril, either question up for yourself, or the YouTube chat is barely popping off. So I don't know if you have a question for Sam on that YouTube chat, or have one for yourself.
I kind of got one for myself right now, and then I'll scan the chat real quick. Sam, you have 6 Missouri Valley football teams in your bracket. Do you really think, and the end of this season can get pretty chaotic with who's got to play who in this conference? South Dakota, I was listening to your the Don Mizzo show this morning, just getting a little bit of your take on it. And do you really think that a 7-5 South Dakota team gets in, and which Missouri Valley teams have room to get in at 7-5 versus probably Youngstown State needs to be 8-4 to secure their spot? And realistically, is it good for the bracket to have over half of a conference in the postseason?
Yeah, I think it's, you kind of hear it from both sides when it comes to fans. Some comments are saying, oh, they should just have, just make it the Big Sky and the Missouri Valley Football Conference, and that's it. That's all the FCS playoff bracket needs. And it's like, well,
amen.
Amen. You have, there's some other teams that are good out there too, like, Tarleton States. They can maybe, do some damage. And, we've seen like UIW make a decent run and Furman make a run. And so there are definitely other teams deserving. But I don't have any problems with, the Valley getting 6 teams in. On the outside, maybe it seems a little bit excessive because that's, 6 teams in a 24-team bracket. Like you're taking up a lot of slots there. But at the same time, there are just some other conferences that probably don't deserve to have, multiple bids. And so where do those other bids go? It's usually going to be the 2 best conferences. Right now it seems like we're heading towards 6 teams getting in from the Valley. To me, Southern Illinois is probably in the most danger because they have a non-D1 win. And Division I wins, that is a criteria, how many D1 wins you have. And so SIU is kind of up against it. I do feel like USD, even if they lose this weekend, they probably have the best chance to get in with 7 wins because they do have 2 top 10 wins at the time over UND and South Dakota State. And so if hypothetically, if USD finishes 7-5, South Dakota State could finish 7-5. You have to lean USD there, with the head-to-head. And so I think USD probably has the best shot to get in with 7 wins. Now, if they just handle business, they're for sure. And obviously with 8 wins, South Dakota State, if they finish 7-5, overall body of work, you would say, well, at South Dakota State, they beat Montana State, they beat Youngstown State, so that's 2 ranked wins, but you're also end the season on a 5-game losing streak. I personally don't think you should put a team in at 7-5 when they end the year like that, especially if Chase Mason isn't back. And so I think South Dakota State definitely needs to win one more time. And yeah, for Youngstown State, favorable games ahead. Indiana State and Northern Iowa should win those games, and then you're for sure in at 8-4. If you drop one of them, it's a bad loss, but you also still have 2 ranked wins to hold your hat on. And so 7-5, a couple of ranked wins, it gives you a shot if you're Youngstown State, but you don't want to put yourself in that situation. You want to say, let's get to 8 wins. We know we're in. Hopefully we're a top 16 seed and get to host a first round game. You don't want to put your fate in the hands of the playoff committee with 7 wins.
So we talk about it all the time on this show. We feel like Youngstown State has been treated unfairly by the playoff committee. And this goes back to when Kurt and I were playing. So let's walk it back. So in 2012, the Penguins, we started we had a win against Pitt, and we started 7-0 or 5-0.
We were 8-1.
No,
right?
that was
no. We were 4-0 to start. 4-0.
And then we went to Fargo and got blown out. It was a top 3 matchup. They were
okay. So
we were 4-0. Yep.
So the Penguins in 2012. What's that?
I said thanks for bringing it up. No, I'm joking.
No. Listen, this is kind of like, how often does like the people in charge of making the selections change? Because South Dakota State might be in this situation this year. So we start 4-0 with a win against Pitt. We lose every game in October, and we're sitting at 4-4, and then we finish the year 8-4. But the playoff committee said we can't have a team that lost 4 straight in the playoffs. At least that's what we were told on the Saturday or the Sunday after that we were the first team out of the playoffs. And so if South Dakota State gets in at 7-5, does a loss to Illinois State or UND hurt them more? Because then if they lose to Illinois State, they'll string 4 in a row together, or they'll finish the season with 4 in a row. Do you think they even get in at 8-4 with the way that this schedule is finished for them?
I think South Dakota State is for sure in if they just win one more game. That would be 8 wins and overall 3 ranked wins. Including a really big one over Montana State. And so, I think one more win for South Dakota State and they're in. But I do agree with you. If they lose these next 2, you're on a 5-game skid, and the team that beat Montana State is not the same team that's being fielded right now. So, each committee is different. I think they serve on like 4-year terms. And so like every year there's 3-4 new committee members, and, each one might weigh things a little bit differently. But I have a hard time seeing a 7-5 South Dakota State team getting in just based off of that 5-game skid.
No, I get that. But like 8-4, you said that you think they're in at 8-4, but just the way that this season has finished going into that back end stretch, do you think that would negatively affect them? Just kind of like how we were told in 2012, hey, you strung all this together in October. This caused us to leave you out on the bubble. And that's kind of how South Dakota State's going to finish this year, where they're stringing together pretty rough second half of the season. Yes, they have some ranked wins, but we had a win against FBS Pitt, and that didn't seem to help us in any light in that, at least in that committee's eyes. So do you see a scenario where the committee kind of leaves an 8-5 South Dakota State out?
Potentially, that would be pretty surprising, honestly. I feel like there's going to be, when it comes to the bubble, there's probably going to be a handful of 7-win teams that are right on that bubble, whether it's like an Austin P or, there could be some 8-win teams on the bubble as well, like Northern Arizona, Dartmouth, New Hampshire, William and Mary, Western Carolina. Like those are all 8-win teams that all have arguments to get in, but then you stack them up with an 8-win South Dakota State team with a few ranked wins. I think the Jacks would definitely be favored, to get in at that point. And, I get your argument of, okay, well, even if they win one more game, they win 1-4, down the stretch. That's not super impressive. But I also feel like it kind of depends. Like if Chase Mason doesn't come back, their quarterback, if he doesn't come back this week, and they lose a close game, but he comes back next week and they win at UND, I think that would be big because the committee, they do factor in player availability. And so you don't totally forgive a team for losing, games, but if Chase Mason, if they lose all those games without him, and then he comes back and they win, that's kind of a different looking 8-4 team when they factor in player availability and when he was or wasn't playing.
All right, cool.
I know we're taking up a lot of Sam's time, so just one, maybe two YouTube chat questions, if there's any for him before we move on.
Sam, he actually covered a lot of the YouTube stuff. He covered a lot of the YouTube stuff.
All right. Well, if you don't mind, Sam, before we let you go, you mind doing these point spread picks with us?
Yeah, sure.
All right, because we're change up on the show. We're gonna do it now. Let Sam go, then we'll talk about Indiana State quickly. But your Youngstown State Penguins are hosting Indiana State. It is a 20.5 point spread for the Penguins. I have us to win and cover.
Same.
Dan.
Yeah, we'll win and cover that.
I'm not picking this week because I'm calling the game.
He is. So Sam, ESPN Plus put the audio on for the Penguins game.
Yeah, I think Youngstown State will cover. I think the even though it's not a ranked matchup, I do think the sense of urgency of, all right, we got to win out and we for sure put ourselves in the playoffs. I think Youngstown plays with that good sense of urgency.
Especially at home. North Dakota at Murray State, noon. It is a 30.5 point spread. I think North Dakota is going to win, but it is going to be just a miserable game that they're just going to try to win and get the heck out of Murray, Kentucky. I'm going Murray State on the points.
I've just been impressed with North Dakota all year long, so 30.5 against Murray State doesn't seem like many points. So give me the UND.
Yeah, go ahead. Who's next?
Sorry. Go DK. I'll go after you, DK.
Sorry, bud. I'm gonna just say that Murray State covers that. I got North Dakota winning by 28.
I am gonna take North Dakota in a beautiful 70 and sunny Saturday in Kentucky.
I think Murray State's going to cover this. We've seen UND have some hangover performances in the past, especially on the road. I think they'll win, comfortably, 21, 24 points or whatever, but I think Murray State can cover that.
And then in my opinion, really the game of the week, South Dakota at Southern Illinois, 1 p.m. This is a pick 'em because I think Southern Illinois was like a half-point favorite. You might as well pick who you want. I was really impressed with the Salukis last week. I'm taking the Salukis to win.
I'm going to take the Salukis here as well, just giving them the home field advantage.
I like that as well. Dome team going outdoors. So give me Southern Ill to win at home.
No way. Give me the Yotes.
I think I'm leaning Southern Illinois here. I'm not sure how much I trust their rushing defense, especially against LJ Phillips, but it's at home for SIU. They're going to be a desperate team. They need to win here to keep their playoff hopes alive. I think the Salukis find a way to get it done.
All right, my boys, the Redbirds.
This is fun.
Illinois State at South Dakota State, 3 p.m. South Dakota State is a minus 13.5 favorite. I'm going Illinois State to cover, and they may win that game.
I'm going to take the Redbirds here as well.
Do we know if the quarterback is back yet?
I think he's doubtful.
He's doubtful.
I don't know for sure, but yeah, it sounds doubtful.
Yeah, the Redbirds. Yeah, give me the Redbirds. Wait, they're getting 13.5. Oh yeah, give me that. Give me that 13.5. Yeah.
Okay. Oh man, he's doubtful. South Dakota State needs to do something, like I said, but I want chaos at the end of this season. I want to see Illinois State cover those points. I don't know if they'll win, but I think they'll cover.
Yeah, I think Illinois State will cover. Even if Chase Mason does come back, I feel like they can keep it, within 2 scores. And even last week, I think South Dakota State was favored by a touchdown against USD. That was surprising to me. This line is surprising to me as well. So I do think South Dakota State can win this game, even without Chase Mason. Yeah, I think I'm predicting them to win this game, but it's going to be by 3, 4, 7 points, something like that.
No doubt. Close game. How about UNI? Northern Iowa is at the Fargo Dome. North Dakota State, 3:30 p.m. North Dakota State, a minus 33.5 favorite. I usually am not on the Bison to score a lot of points, but I think this is a look ahead game. I think they're looking to spoil our fun as they traditionally do. So I don't think they show up. Bison win and cover.
Bison will win comfortably. Give me the Panthers because 33.5 seems like a lot. I know I'll regret that pick though.
I'm with you, Kurt. The Panthers will cover that spread. Maybe North Dakota State was in that battle with UND, so they're a little beat up. So I'll take those points.
Oh man, just UNI does not have an offense, but I think I'm going to take them to cover that 33.5. I don't know. It's going to be weird.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched so many great NDSU versus Northern Iowa matchups in person, and the fact that this is 33.5 points or whatever it is, that's crazy to me. But I still think NDSU is going to cover. Northern Iowa just doesn't have it this year, and I feel like the Bison might have something to prove offensively. Kind of get a bad taste out of their mouth after a couple of games where their offense just looked a little off these last couple of games.
Sledge, you took UNI, right?
I did.
All right.
I didn't
so
want
Sam
to, but
and
I
on the
did.
Bison. Okay. Sam, we've taken up a ton of your time. Greatly appreciated. Before you sign out, any last words to the Penguin faithful, fans, players, students, and lastly, remind everyone how they could follow you, whether it's social media, find your articles, find your podcast.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys having me on. Again, at Sam Herder FCS on Twitter, herosports.com is the website. And yeah, always fun to go on team-specific podcasts and shows and talk about their team, talk about the FCS nationally. And it's great to see Youngstown State back up on the rise. I know there's kind of the portal, kind of set you guys back a little bit. But, Youngstown State is a blue blood in the FCS. And, we talk a lot about how the FCS is kind of top heavy right now. It's the same teams over and over deep in the playoff brackets. But there still are, a good amount of teams that have had success in the past that maybe have taken a step back. And you just hope some of those teams can rise back up. Like a Youngstown State and, Eastern Kentucky, Eastern Washington, Villanova, New Hampshire. These are teams that had success 10, 20 years ago. And hopefully, you guys specifically can just keep on, rising up and challenge deep into the playoffs this year.
Sam Herder, Hero Sports, man. It's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you again. There's like a red little telephone where you could exit the chat, but you're welcome back anytime. Just let us know, brother.
All right. Thank you, guys. See you.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
All right, guys, let's run through Indiana State quickly because we are definitely over time. Indiana State Sycamores are at number 19, Youngstown State Penguins, noon in the Ice Castle. You can find it on ESPN Plus. Put on the auto where the Sledge will be listening. Some quick fun facts for y'all. First season, 1896. They've been playing ball for nearly 130 years. Kurt Mallory is in his 7th season at the helm for the Sycamores. He's 26-59 overall, so it's been a rough going. About 8,300 enrolled. Indiana State was actually the first higher education system in the state of Indiana. It was initially founded to train and educate teachers for the public schools of Indiana. That was the purpose of Indiana State. And their newest mascot is Sycamore Sam. He kind of looks like a fox. He was interviewed in 1995. Alumni, they had a ton of alumni that are very interesting, but not there. A lot of them you don't know them. I just looked in there. I was like, wow, this guy is very interesting. But this is a football podcast, not a bio podcast. So definitely encourage you to do your own research. However, the number one person that sticks out as far as Indiana State alumni, for us, the face of Youngstown State is Jim Tressel. For Indiana State is
Legend
Larry Bird.
Larry Bird. I had a roommate that looked like him at Youngstown. Shout out DJ Maine. A couple others. Michael Shrewsbury, the current head basketball coach at Notre Dame, and they actually have a ton of basketball coach legacy. So they seem to be a basketball school at best. Really. Last year, if you guys don't remember, we played, or really last time we played Indiana State, it was 21-14 in what was a nail biter. We went up 21-0 at half. They scored 14. It was very ugly. We're lucky to get the heck out of there alive. But this team started off 2-0. And then after that, they went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-game losing streak until they had their big upset while we were in Fargo. They were at South Dakota State and they upset the Jackrabbits 24-12. Huge win for Indiana State. Ugly loss for the Jackrabbits. So they could beat anyone any given Sunday. They most recently lost to Illinois State. Curdy, what do you think about these old Sycamore boys?
I think on March 12th, 1985, against the Atlanta Hawks, Larry Bird scored a Celtics franchise record of 60 points. And I think the Youngstown State Penguins are going to score 60 points against Indiana State this weekend. We will roll. It won't be close. That's it. That's all I have.
Searle.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like,
that's all you need.
Dude, like, this team's weird, man. Like, I don't care if, like, Chase Mason plays or doesn't play, that a South Dakota State roster is not talented enough to beat like a Indiana State team. So, like, but then, like, the following week, they play Illinois State and they lose by 32, and they lose by 29 and they lose by 31, and then so, man, you just don't know. Like, you hope this isn't a classic trap game for the Penguins riding high off of a big win. And ultimately, I think that this Indiana State defense gives up a lot of points, which obviously suits our identity as a team that scores a lot of points, and Coach Yursich doing an awesome job. I think this is a good spot for Coach Hanline to get his defense comfortable and get their feet back underneath of them, and to play some good disciplined football and go into the end of the season, not letting you and I ruin it. So I think it's a good opportunity for both sides of the ball to kind of get their feet back underneath of them and get rolling into the postseason where we hope we're going.
Score?
No, I'm not picking it.
Oh, that's right. DK.
Yeah, I mean, I got us winning 45-21. And I will say this. I think their head coach, Kurt Mallory, has done considering we've all been there. I quite frankly, and this isn't a knock at them, but the stadium, some of their facilities, I mean, it's got to be hard to recruit there. But Indiana State has always played us pretty tough, right? I mean, going back 15 years, so I don't know whether maybe we come out of the gate hot and get up and then maybe have a little lull, but they'll be ready. This guy's a good coach. They beat South Dakota State. I don't think it'll be completely easy, but we should win this game. I don't see them stopping our offense. And I'm going to go back to Kurt's comment a couple of weeks ago or a month or so ago. I don't think our offense has really played. I think there's still room out there for our offense to get better, if that makes any sense.
No, I agree with you on that. I totally agree with you on that.
I think there is still maybe some wrinkles. Coach Yursich is holding out, and but we're going to win this game.
We scored 48 last week, and we missed a field goal, and we muffed one.
Yep.
That was against Southern Illinois, and I'd like to say Southern Illinois has a lot more talent than Indiana State has.
True. You can't deny that. There's no doubt. We put up 48 points, and we didn't look like we really put much effort. Like, I mean, do you ever see our offense like huffing and puffing and like, it was such a struggle? It was. And
that's why, there was just not as much resistance. I know Kyle was talking about it earlier. Like, it felt like Youngstown State last week, we could get stops. I don't think Southern Illinois really ever stopped us very much. That's why it felt like we were a little bit better than them. I know they were evenly matched, but it just felt better because they couldn't get off the field against them.
And one last comment. I'm sorry, I know, Sal, but again, after the game, I don't know if any of you guys noticed, their head coach he couldn't get to Bo Brungard fast enough and put his arm around him and talk to him for not a second. I felt like he talked to him for like 2 minutes. Like, there's a quarterback who went up to another quarterback and said, dude, what do you say to Bo Brungard after a game right now? If you're the opposing head coach, what do you say? Like, obviously, you're everything we saw on film and more. I mean, they couldn't get a hand on the guy.
Yeah.
Couldn't touch him.
You just tell him how much money you are willing to give him.
yeah.
I got $100,000 for you now if you want it. If you're getting,
Yeah.
What's crazy is obviously Bo Brungard watches film, but it's like, how can he possibly watch film? What he sees from these other defenses, they're not going to run that against him. Like, they're going to come up with something completely unique for him. So I don't know how much that possibly helps, but real quick on Indiana State, their defense ranks 125th in the country out of 126. They're only better than Murray State. And then lastly, they are very last, 126 out of 126 in time of possession. So they don't move the ball very well, and their defense allows long drives. Penguins are 26 in time of possession. I think we run the ball, we kill the clock, we get out of here alive. I'm going 38-7, just mostly because I think we're just going to kill the clock and try to get this team out of town so we can move ahead. A couple other score predictions. Cyril, let me know if I missed any. I know Richard Wolf, 55-10. Everyone has the Penguins, by the way. Wolf, 55-10. Moz, 48-31. Jason Krob, 42-17. Nico, 48-24. And Mets, 45-21. I think that covered everyone. Just let me know if not. And then lastly, for tiebreaker points, because apparently it was needed last week, an FBS pick, I picked Pitt to cover the points and maybe win the game against Notre Dame, who is an 11.5-point favorite. Anyone have any games?
Yeah, I got Louisville -2.5. Missouri State -4.5.
Who's Louisville got?
Clemson.
Okay.
And I think Missouri State has UTEP.
Okay. Kurt or Dan?
What game did you pick, Sal?
I picked Pitt.
Oh, man, that's the one I wanted. All right, I'm going to get a different one. Go ahead, Cop.
All right, I'm going to go Roll Tide. Roll Tide. Alabama giving 5.5 to Oklahoma, but give me the Tide.
So what game you take?
Louisville -2.5 versus Clemson, and then Missouri State -4.5 versus UTEP.
Ooh. I'm going to just keep rocking with Iowa, man. They're getting 6.5 against USC, and I just do not like Dave Brown in California. So
What's the spread on Iowa?
But your wives like each other, so you got to hang out once in a while.
Yeah, it's true. They
What's
got
your
good
What's your Iowa spread?
6.5. Iowa's getting 6.5. So let me keep rocking with the Hawks, man.
Okay. I know we're well over, but anything on Instagram, Trill, anything on YouTube, and Dan, any shout outs to any Penguins?
Whoever wants to go first, or you want me to? The quick shout out Penguins. 2 quick coaches in the playoffs still. Tim Terrell, Akron Hoban, played for Tress, 97 title team. And I'm probably missing a bunch of other guys, but locally, Pat Pearson with Girard. He's got a quarterback that I think is up for one of the Mr. Ohio guys. Pat was, Sal, you might remember Pat. He was a defensive GA when we were first on there. So 2 quick shout outs. I know there's more coaches around the state, but just a couple of quick ones there.
You guys have anything? You want to lock it up?
Is his son the quarterback?
Yeah, that's his son.
I thought it was his son. Right?
Yep, that's Pat Pearson's son, and he's pretty darn good. He's only a sophomore, so he's real good.
Go Indians.
You guys good?
Yeah, I'm good. Let's wrap it up. That was a good
All
show,
right.
Sam.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot of fun.
Hey, let's get him. Let's get him a gearbox.
Yeah, we
There we
definitely
go.
need to send him something. Curdy, hook Dan up with his email.
Yeah.
Any Indiana State Sycamores again are at number 19, Youngstown State, and the Ice Castle at noon. Kyle Steele, the Sledge, is on the call on ESPN Plus. Should be in the mid 50s. partly cloudy. Should be a decent day. Just make sure to bring your hoodie. But again, that was Sam Herder, Hero Sports. That was awesome. Penguins win. They're in. That is what he made it clear to get into the playoffs. But again, we are the Youngstown Penguin Football Podcast. Follow us on Instagram, Whitetown Penguin Podcast, and we are everywhere podcasts are found. Give us a 5-star review, a subscribe, a like, and a follow. But I am Sal Guerrero. That's Kurt Hess. That's Dan Kopp. That's Kyle Stroh. And as always, go Penguins.